Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of the Digital Futures Institute seminars. We are very honored and pleased to have with us today Dr. Muhammad Kazim. He's a senior lecturer at the Montfort University in Leicester, and he will be talking today about all sorts of interesting things, including his recent research on security and post-quantum algorithms. I hope I did okay summary, Mohammed.
Yes,
I won't talk
absolutely.
anymore. I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself and, of course, talk more about the work that you have been doing at the Montfort University.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kakia, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll make my slides full screen so before I get started. Just a little bit about myself. Kakia has already kind of introduced me. So I've been working as a senior lecturer at Montfort University since 2019. I'm also the program lead for cybersecurity technical professional apprenticeship within the DMU. Along with this work, I've been working in academics in the UK for more than a decade now. I worked as a KTP associate at University of Derby for about a year, and before that, while I was doing my PhD at University of Derby, I had the chance to work as an associate academic as well as a postgraduate teaching assistant. I've recently won a couple of research grants. The first one that's mentioned over here is very specific to this talk, which was titled Quantum Cyber Shield, and we developed a security solution using post-quantum lightweight cryptography. This was funded by Innovate UK Cyber ASAP grant, and it was funded in two phases. We won about 75K in the last year to work on it, and we developed a prototype for it successfully. I've also worked as a co-I for a cyber local funded project, which was called Cyber Sprint, recently within the last year. Right, before I go into a lot of detail about, post-quantum cryptography, the first thing, that you might be thinking is, why do we need post-quantum cryptography? Okay, what is wrong with the current cryptography system, or what are the current limitations that we can't really use these current mechanisms and algorithms in the post-quantum era, after quantum computers come in. So, just to give you a brief summary about what already exists, current cryptography has two basic cryptography types: symmetric cryptography and asymmetric cryptography. So, if you see the slides on the top, we can see that in cryptography, in symmetric cryptography, we have the sender on the left hand side and the receiver on the right hand side. And essentially, when the receiver and the sender and receiver want to share a message between each other, they agree a shared secret key with them, and then they use that secret key to encrypt and then decrypt all the information. So there's a single key, and this key is used to encrypt the message, and this receiver will use the same key to decrypt the message. It's used in a lot of current algorithms like AES, RSA, so not RSA, Cha-Cha-20, etc. All of them are, symmetric key cryptography algorithms. But the challenge that comes in is that when we have about 10,000 devices, where you have to distribute the keys, so sharing the key distribution becomes a challenge in symmetric cryptography. And then we have asymmetric cryptography, where the sender will have a key pair, so they will have one private key and one public key, and so as the receiver. So both the sender and the receiver have a key pair. What the sender does is that for encrypting the data, they will use the private key of the receiver. So they will use the private key of the receiver, and they will encrypt the message with that private key of the receiver. And then once the message is sent, because only the receiver knows their own public key, this is encrypted with the public key of the receiver. And once the message is encrypted with the public key of the receiver, it's sent to the receiver. And because only the receiver knows their own private key, only they can decrypt the key. So that's how the asymmetric cryptography works. So of course, asymmetric is really useful to establish a shared secret, because we don't need a much advanced key distribution mechanism like with symmetric cryptography. But on the downside, asymmetric cryptography is much more slow than symmetric, because again we've got a key pair, and then we are using the public key of the receiver to send the message, to encrypt the message, and then they will be using the private key. So it's about 10,000 times slower So in practical applications, both the symmetric and asymmetric are combined together. They will be working together, like in HTTPS. In the SSL handshake process, for example, we'll be using asymmetric cryptography initially to set up the shared secret key. And once the shared secret key is established, we'll be using the symmetric cryptography algorithms to quickly exchange a lot of messages. Another background, topic that we need to discuss initially, along with symmetric and asymmetric cryptography, is the one-way functions. So one-way functions are again the backbone of cryptography. Everything in cryptography actually starts with a one-way function. So we can say it's basically a mathematical mapping, that is easy to compute in one direction, but it's really infeasible or very hard to invert it back to the original function without extra information. So if we have a value x, we can compute f of x directly, and we can have this function, but it's computationally infeasible to recover a valid x such that we can't really apply an inverse of the function to get back to the value of x. A lot of hash functions like SHA, MD5, etc., they are based on one-way functions. So some of the examples include SHA-256, where we compress an arbitrary length input into fixed length digests. And similarly, a lot of modular exponential that we'll discuss in a couple of slides later. Similarly, integer squaring, they are based on one-way functions. And then an important type of cryptography that's currently employed is the public key encryption. So what happens basically in public key encryption is that we know that with asymmetric cryptography, every sender and receiver have their own public and private keys. So where we can encrypt a message using the public key and decrypt it using the private key, as we discussed in the first slide. So there's another thing called key encapsulation method. So key encapsulation method is again a method where this asymmetric cryptography can be initially used to establish a shared secret key. So what's going to happen is that Bob will use the private key of Alice to share a shared secret key, or a random secret. And then once Alice receives the message, Alice will use the public key, and then Alice will be able to see what the shared secret key is, and then they will be able to they would have established a shared secret with each other that they will be using for all the communication later on. So this is called as key encapsulation method, where we've used asymmetric cryptography, and then we have established a shared secret key between Alice and Bob, and then they can securely communicate with each other. And then moving on to digital signatures. So public encryption again allows us, gives us confidentiality. So, we are securely sharing the data between the sender and the receiver, but it doesn't, offer us integrity or authenticity. So this is where, digital signatures come into play. If, we have a sender on the left-hand side who wants to send a message and to the receiver on the right-hand side, for example, like to a bank or, to a website, for example, what they can do is they can compute a hash of the original message and sign it with their own private key. So the sender will compute the hash of the message, encrypt it with the private key of the signer, and then they will have a digital certificate assigned to them by certificate authority, and this whole message is then sent to the receiver. Once the receiver receives the message, all they do is, because they already have the public key of the sender, they can decrypt the message with the public key of the sender, so they can get the message hash and the original message. Once they get the original message, they compute the hash again, and they compare the two hashes. If the hashes match, they can be guaranteed that the message has not been tampered with, and it has been sent by the original sender because it was signed by the certificate authority. So again, this ensures the integrity and authenticity, and public encryption helps us with the confidentiality of the data. Moving on, I'll not go in a lot of detail due to time limitations for RSA, which is one of the key algorithms that's used for public key encryption, as well as for its variants are used for signatures also. But an important thing to understand is that public key encryption, like asymmetric cryptography, uses RSA as one of the key algorithms, and it's based on on factorization. So basically, what the sender and the receiver are going to do is that they're going to select two prime numbers, which are really large prime numbers, and compute a product of them. So we have two large prime numbers P and Q, which are usually 1,000 bytes at the moment, and then you have you take the product of them with each other, and at the moment, once we have the product, we can then use this phi of n as one of the things that we use to create the private key of the of the sender, and then the same mechanism is used on the receiver side. So that's how we currently generate the public key encryption keys, private keys. So again, the assumption over here is that once we have computed phi of n, and we are going to compute our ciphertext with this, which is m is our original message, e in this case is the public key that has been derived, and then n is the number whose factor has been calculated. So basically, if even though e is publicly known, due to factorization problem, which is mathematically hard, no computers at the moment can determine what n is. So they cannot basically factorize how n was established. So essentially, n is a one-way function, and at the moment with current computers, it's impossible to go back to p and q. And because p and q cannot be established, our whole communication in this case is secure. Okay, so that's the public key. And moving on to the key agreement protocols, we use a different kind of mathematical problem where again we have select two prime numbers, p is a prime and g is a generator, and if the sender and receiver want to establish a shared secret key, what the sender does is that sender selects their own secret A, which in this case is their private key, and then they send g raised to the power a mod p message to the receiver. Receiver selects a random secret B, and they'll be sending G raised to power mod P back to the sender. And even though again, in this case again, the mathematically hard problem is that it's impossible to compute the values of A even if G and P are known because of the discrete logarithmic problem. So discrete logarithmic problems are again mathematically hard problems that the current computers are unable to solve. And the similar algorithm of Diffie-Hellman is currently applied and used in our daily lives by using elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, and it applies the same principle to elliptic curves and all the TLS 1.3 that we use, SSH, etc., and many VPNs use this kind of security. So just to conclude what we discussed so far, our cryptography currently is based on having mathematically hard problems. For example, with RSA public key encryption, we have factorization, where we assume even if the public key is known, the original prime numbers cannot be obtained because of the one-wayness. Or similarly, we have along with factorization, we have discrete logarithmic problems, where again, if G and P are known, it's still impossible for attacker to compute the values of A and B with the current hardware and the computers we've got. However, with the quantum computers coming into play, quantum supremacy again is the potential or the ability of quantum computing devices to solve the problems that classical computers practically cannot solve. So this is where Shor's algorithm comes in. So Shor, published an algorithm back in 1994 that says, factors n, and that solves factors n and discrete logs in polynomial type. Okay. So again, if we remember our RSA, which was based on factorization of mathematically hard problem, as well as digital Diffie-Hellman, Diffie-Hellman, etc., which are based on discrete logs, they can be solved in polynomial time theoretically by Shor's algorithm if we have a quantum computer. So again, this is a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. So if we have a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, that would lead to instant collapse of RSA, Diffie-Hellman, PCDSA, etc. So even before we get to the stage, where quantum computers will be able to break these things, we are already facing harvest now and decrypt later problem. Okay, so a lot of data, for example, in healthcare, in finance, in defense, is still, is that kind of data which will still have a lot of value in 5 years or 10 years when actually quantum computers are publicly available or, are available in large scale. So if the sensitive information is captured now, the attackers might just keep it now, and then as soon as the quantum computers become available, they will use them to decrypt it. So Shor algorithm is one of the problem. Another one is Grover's algorithm. And again, this basically says that if we have a symmetric side, Grover algorithm yields a square root speed up in the brute force search, halving effective key length. So with an effective quantum computer using Grover's algorithm, basically the effective key length is halved. So if you have a by using a brute force search. So if you have a 128-bit key, it will become 64-bit key and so on. But the good thing is, the quantum computers do not solve all the hard problems. So how do we, secure the data from quantum computers? There's two ways. One is quantum key distribution. So there's a lot of work, there's a lot of research going on in quantum key distribution at the moment. So this also provides quantum resistant confidentiality, uses quantum mechanics to protect information, and it doesn't require a full quantum computer. But it does require new communication infrastructure. So the main limitation with QKD is that you need specialized hardware, you need things like fiber optics. So that actually reduces the network limit as well as makes the topology complex. If we talk about current real life systems, for example, in critical infrastructure, in healthcare, etc., we are not in a place where we'll be able to deploy this kind of algorithms in a short time. And this is where post-quantum cryptography comes into play. So this is basically cryptography based on computational assumptions believed to be resistant to attacks by quantum computers. And this uses only classical non-quantum operations to implement. And the advantage of having these classical non-quantum operations is that we don't need specialized hardware. You're not looking to have fiber optics, etc. We can actually implement them on the current systems. In terms of post-quantum readiness, there's been a lot of work going on for the past few years within the US NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, as well as the National Security Agency, as well as the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency within the US have been working together to draft the standards which are quantum secure. National Cybersecurity Center in the UK, within the last month, they have released a timeline for migration to post-quantum cryptography as well. So, everywhere in the world, there's a lot of work going on, and there's a lot of focus to start moving towards post-quantum cryptography. And this is the NIST standards timeline. So currently, NIST released a few post-quantum standards in August last year. In August 2024, they've released 3 standards. Uh, Kyber, dilithium, and findings that we'll see later on. And at the moment, even though there's a less probability, like there's a 1 in 7 chance of breaking RSA 2048 by 2026, and there's like a 50% chance that RSA 2048 could be broken by 2031. But we still need to be prepared, because again, to break RSA 2048, we need a quantum computer with millions of qubits or quantum bits. At the moment, the quantum computers that we've got can only have like hundreds of qubits. So still, a bit away, but because there's a lot of investment in it, a lot of nation states are already working on it. We really don't know when it's going to come in. So it's better to be prepared as soon as possible. So in terms of post-quantum cryptography, we've got 5 different types, which are hash and symmetric-based, uh, code-based, multivariate quadratic, lattice-based, and elliptic curve isogenous. I'll put the stars over here because the standards that have been released by NIST are based on these 2 types, which are lattice-based as well as hashed and symmetric-based. So in terms of the lattice-based cryptography, there's a high level of academic interest because it provides flexible constructions. It's based on learning with errors. LW is a term you'll probably see with this, and it yields both the encryption algorithms that we use for public encryption as well as digital signatures. So that's the strong side of it, and uh, you know it can achieve reasonable communication sizes as it says here. So even though the keys and the signatures that it produces are relatively larger in terms of the number of bits, but its speed is still the speed of these algorithms is really good. It's still comparable to elliptic curve cryptography, and slightly even some people have been doing experiments and quoted saying that it's even faster than the current RSA algorithms. And there's one standard which is based on the hash and symmetric based as well. So again, uh, as it says here, this can only be used to make signatures and not public key encryption. There's a very high confidence in hash-based signatures, but large signatures required for many signature systems. So again, this is relatively slow, and because of the large size of the signatures it produces. Okay, I'm not going a lot of detail of the others because again of the time limit, but yeah, there are other algorithms from these types where some of the algorithms went to NIST round 3, like multivariate quadratic algorithm, and one of the elliptic curve, which is relatively a new topic. One of their algorithms went to round 4, but they were broken. Crypto analysts were able to break them, so they're still looking to develop new ways of elliptic curve isogenies. So the key standards that have been released by NIST are MLKEM, which is also known as Kyber, and it's a latest based key encapsulation mechanism. If you remember again, key encapsulation from one of the initial slides, the way it works is that basically, the sender and receiver will have their own key pairs, private and public key, and to establish the session key, we'll be using MLKEM. So a shared secret key can be established as for the session, and then once a shared secret key, again, all of the cryptography is as secure as our key. So if our key is really secure, that means our algorithms are secure. And then for digital signatures, there's another algorithm called MLDSA, which is called as dilithium, or FIPS 204. It's another latest based algorithm that has been released by NIST. And then we have another third one called Sphinx, which is a stateless hash-based algorithm. And again, if you remember, this does produce signatures, but which are really secure but slightly larger in size. And then there's still work going on DSA, which is a lattice-based algorithm called Falcon, and there's another one going. HQC is another one which is being drafted at the moment. Right. So, in terms of last few slides to share, in terms of key exchange and signatures with post-quantum cryptography, the key exchange sizes stay manageable, as we can see over here. For example, classic elliptical cryptography, uh, public keys 64 bytes, and then Kyber has 800 bytes of public key. But the good thing is that if we were to use them together, in a hybrid way, and we add them together, it is 864 bytes, which is still under 1500 byte Ethernet maximum transmission unit. So on the Ethernet, the maximum transmission unit for a single packet is 1500, and because we are less than that, we are at 864, we can still send it as a single IP packet, so it is relatively quick. And key size jump with PQC signatures. Okay, so even though the key exchange sizes stay the same, but with the signatures, the key sizes do jump. So, for example, if you're using dilithium, we'll have about a signature of 2440 byte, 1312 byte private key, and 22528 public key. So this fits in 2 packets, and Sphinx will have about this size, 17,800 byte signature, which will require 12 packets. This is a performance analysis of some of the post-quantum algorithms, which have been done by researchers. You can read more about them on this website. But essentially, based on their experiments, they've said that Kyber is actually really quick, and they've used it as a benchmark. And it takes for key generation about 30,000 cycles, and again, the performance is quick for Kyber and other latest based algorithms. However, for the code-based algorithms and the it is relatively much more, as you can see here. And so, in terms of transitioning to post-quantum, we've got post-quantum algorithms for key exchange, public key encryption, as well as digital signatures. So, current public key exchange algorithms, like ECDH, X25519, RSA key exchange, they are going to be replaced or, work together with MLKEM. And similarly, for public key encryption, it's again going to be MLKEM instead of RSA variation or OAEP. And for signatures, where we use ECDSA, etc., we're going to be using MLDSA because, again, at the moment it's the fastest one, but we've got other options as well. So as you can see here, the NIST timeline is that by 2030, all existing public key methods with 128-bit symmetric hashing methods will be deprecated, again, because of the Grover's algorithm. This key is effectively half due to quantum computers, which is breakable, so we can double it for symmetric algorithms. We can make it 256 bits to make it more secure, but there's no real solution for asymmetric cryptography where we need post-quantum algorithms. And all existing public key methods and 128 symmetric hashing methods will be removed from FIPS 140 by 2035. So just to summarize, I'll not go into a lot of detail. Because of the some of the infrastructure we currently use, for example, let's say in our medical or in our critical infrastructure, it's really not easy to straight away deploy post quantum algorithms without any issues. So at the moment, the best thing, there's a lot of, again, one thing that I worked in my Innovate UK project as well. We looked at ways of how we can use hybrid algorithms where current algorithms can work together to ensure backward compatibility. So anything which is legacy software, legacy hardware, etc., which can't be really updated, etc. It's better to use a hybrid approach, and so better to do it slowly. So there's gradual progress. OpenSSL has recently released 3.5, which has post-quantum algorithm support. So that's something which is really positive. But in the handshake process, client Hello automatically offers, this hybrid mechanism where there's a standard signature algorithm along with MLK. So again, to conclude, there's a lot of work going on in post-quantum algorithm. There's some standard forums you can get engaged with. For example, there's Open Quantum Alliance. They've got their own open source code, etc. And again, hybrid encryption can be a good temporary solution. Thank you for listening, and questions, sure.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I think one of the shames of the technology here have been that we were not able to share the right screen for you. So essentially, we have you speaking and going over these material, but we haven't managed to show the slides to the audience. But we will make sure that we release them in addition to everything. So we will essentially, when we edit this video, we'll make sure that this gets the nice graphics and the nice visuals that it deserves. That I know your slides were very detailed.
Okay. Thank you. Unfortunately, I didn't know that the slides are not showing up. I've just seen this. So
no, I think what happened is we shared the wrong. Well, I shared. I can now see something changing. I think we didn't. You went full screen, and it shared the window where you actually had your slides. So I can show them now, but I could not see you moving them before. And here they are. So, but don't worry, please. This is absolutely fine. We can go through different things as needed, and we can make sure we attach these as part of the recording as well. I guess one quick question would be: where do you see as an expert in that space to be the limitations of maybe the next challenge up for quantum researchers, computer science generally? Is it the algorithm? Is, say, the set of hardware behind it, or is it all together?
I think, to be honest, it's all together. It's a combination of things because, again, in terms of the hardware, we do have, in defense or, in NHS, for example, there's legacy hardware. So we really can't, update a lot of hardware really quickly, for example, in OT devices or, embedded systems. So there's a need to, gradually work in updating that. There's also a lot of need to, test these algorithms on how well they work in technologies like IoT devices, for example, or the small scale processing devices, that are currently available. But again, the current testing has mostly been done on large computers, so there's still a lot of potential on seeing how efficient these post-quantum algorithms are on smaller embedded devices, for example. And also the other challenge that comes into play is, at the moment we've only got few standards. So again, NIST is already looking at that. What if those standards are broken by someone, by cryptanalysts in the future? So we do need to have lots of replacements and alternate standards that can be potentially used.
Fantastic. We have a question from the audience. Thanks very much, Akraz. So the question is, what do you think about the current computing chips like NVIDIA on the security of current crypto systems? And I can
Again,
repeat that. I don't know if you can see that.
I can see that absolutely.
Yeah, fab.
So again, there's a lot of work that NVIDIA is doing, and Microsoft have also developed their chips recently, and we are progressing towards large scale quantums. But again, the chips that we bought at the moment, or the hardware, they still process I think hundreds of qubits, not more than that. And for quantum computers to become as strong as breaking current encryption, they need to be successfully processing millions of qubits. So probably in 5 years' time, again, who knows, maybe earlier than that, or maybe slightly later, we'll be in a place where we have strong enough, quantum computers with chips that can make this kind of progress. But yeah, there's still a lot of work going on, and as cybersecurity professionals, I think we need to be looking at how do we, secure our systems as new technology comes in.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. On that note, I think unless there are any further questions, and I can't see any more, what we're going to do is we're going to round this one up. I'd like to thank you very much, Mohammed. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but we'll make sure we do justice to the lovely slides you prepared when we edit the video. And we'll look forward to hearing more about your work in the future. I'm sure this is a space to watch for everybody else.
Thank you, Gaggi. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
No worries. Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Speak to you soon.